Today, I want to introduce my friend Pete Cooper. He is with Spring Creek Design. These guys are phenomenal renovation artists is what I call them. I call them artists because they don't just give you like a renovation. They give you a style. They give you a dream. They give you your vision with their expertise in just a wonderful way. So Peter, thanks for coming. Thanks for standing in this home with me.
Thanks for having me, Kirk, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
It's well-deserved, man. My clients love you. They love your business, and you deserve it. I love seeing your stuff. Tell me about when you do a renovation, what is that one thing that you do that really showcases it? Tell us about that.
Wow, that's an interesting question because they're all different. I think what we're trying to get to the heart of with any of our projects is to understand why the client is engaging in the work that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And everybody has a different reason or set of reasons that motivate why they would call someone like us. Mm-hmm. And it can be easy to sort of fall into the trap of, kind of grabbing a clipboard and making a list and saying, what can I do for you? Yeah. But if you don't understand the motivating reasons behind that list, the sort of the itches that we're there to scratch, it can be very difficult to do anything really other than deliver, things on a shopping list, which is really not what we're about. Yeah. I'm more interested in understanding what the client's problems and challenges and needs are and seeing if there's something creative or different that we can suggest that might be a better solution. Sometimes things they haven't thought of before. Sometimes there are things that they have thought of before, but maybe there's a different way to express them that in some ways might be more unique.
Okay.
So understanding motivations is often more important at the outset than having a list of what we're there to do.
What is the thing, like, how do you get at that, right? So if I call you and I say, hey, Pete, like, it's time to do our kitchen. We're ready. We need this, and this. Maybe we need to move the dishwasher over here, or we need some extra cabinets or a coffee bar or something. What is that one thing? Where does that magic occur? That one question, that one way of approaching that with me so that I walk into the meeting and I go, I need this, and this. And then I come out with this like bedazzled, if you will, Pete Cooper experience, right? Like how do you get that out of me?
In some ways, you have to accept the fact that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
By that, what I mean is when I start a conversation with you, you're already very far along in the process, right? You and Jen have been talking about what to do and why to do it. And you might have been thinking about this since many cases, years, couple of years have gone by. Mm-hmm. You've been sort of talking about this project and you're very focused on how you're going to accomplish what you have in your mind. And what I ask people to do is to sort of take a step back and understand that I just got here, right? Okay. I don't have the benefit of the previous 2 years of sort of, the conversations, the heartache, in many cases, the arguments that go into formulating that list.
For sure.
And that's the goal. That's where the creativity really happens, is to understand what I'm there to do and why I'm there to do it. Okay. As a precursor to even getting into a discussion about now. How comes much later. You got to get me caught up on the what's and the whys.
Why? Yeah, exactly.
And that often surprises people in an initial conversation because they have a distinct list of hows, and that's what they want to talk about. That I want a microwave over here, and I want a coffee bar over there. And I say, well, wait a second, take a step back. I don't understand. Tell me how we got to that place.
Correct.
So that it's not one thing per se, but it's an approach that's a little bit different.
It's super interesting because I often find that as well. So we're so easy to walk into a house and say, Mr. Seller, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. This is this, this is that. Here's how we're going to go about it. But we don't start with the why, we're there. And it's really interesting to hear that the clients, start that process and you come in, because that's exactly what I have to do all the time, because they've already thought about this. They're not even calling me unless in fact, I have a friend who won't let his wife talk to me about renovation because he knows that it might be a move.
Yeah, right.
That's serious, but like a joke. He jokes with me about that. But like, okay, so you're going to do renovation and you're going to give out this product, right? And we're all in business, right? So we all have points of differentiation, how we do things that are different than everybody else. Like if you had to isolate one specific thing that you would do that's different than, you know, John's home improvement, what is that?
I would say that we take a very holistic approach to where our clients live. So I don't think about one project. I think about a relationship over time. And that relationship really is founded on a group of partnerships that go beyond myself. And it's one of the things that we work on together. And people like yourself are a critical part of what we do, because one of the very first pieces of advice I give people before they embark on a major remodeling project is go house hunting.
Sure.
Go house hunting. Make sure that the things that you want aren't already available elsewhere in the marketplace. Get a good realtor, talk to Kirk, and go on a house hunting trip. There's a high possibility that you might find the perfect property and realize that you dodged a major remodeling bullet.
Interesting.
On the other hand, you may find that what you're looking for isn't out in the market elsewhere. It is, in fact, in the home that you live in now. And you'll approach that project with a renewed confidence that you're doing the right thing. But either way, what we seek to do is partner with the client over the long haul, because guess what? If they do buy that house, instead of remodeling this one, that one's going to need some work too.
Sure.
And we typically produce master plans for our clients that illustrate multiple phases of a project that can be carried out over time as their needs in a home evolve.
Right.
So I think that's something that we do that's maybe a little bit different is I don't look at just the project that we were called to do today. I'm looking at how is that project going to age in that house over time, and what are the client's needs likely to be over time? Should they stay? Should they move? If they stay, how do we plan a strategy for them to live in this home over the long haul?
So I come to you and I want this elaborate kitchen. Like we're standing in this, what I would call lovely kitchen right now. And it's got a giant island, and you've got the microwave is in the bottom, and you've got all the stuff, right? But we're in this house and it's not going to happen. So are you saying that you might actually tell someone that, hey, we don't have what we need here to accomplish what you want? Or are you saying we're going to figure it out? Or do we start knocking down walls? How do you get through that? Like, what if you can't? Like, what do you do if you can't make it happen?
Wow, that's a good question. Honestly, in that I've never encountered a situation for which we couldn't derive the appropriate design.
Okay.
It's not normally about can the house be modified to suit the requirements of the client and their lives and their family. Usually the stumbling block is money.
Okay.
We may be able to come up with the perfect plan, but that plan might be impossible to execute within the client.
Within the budget. Okay.
And that happens.
Right. So that creates this whole different question for me. It's like, tell me about that balance between like budget and like how do you view that, not only as the contractor, but as someone that clearly I think is saying that you're out for their needs and the person first, and then trying to tailor that. But like, how do you keep it where you're balancing that budget and that need and that desire? How does that work with Spring Creek?
It starts from the initial conversation, really, because although it's impossible to give somebody sort of a hard number for a project for which we don't have a plan.
Correct.
It's hard to give prices based on ideas.
Sure.
But it is possible to give ballparks based on ideas and to have an understanding about where costs are likely to go as we pursue a set of ideas. And most problems have multiple solutions that cover a range of budget outcomes. And we try to talk through that up front, that if we go down this road from a planning standpoint, this is where we're going to end up from a cost standpoint. And if it doesn't make sense to do that, then let's not go down that path in the first place. So oftentimes these bigger budget issues can be solved fairly quickly at the outset of the of the process so that we're not engaged in weeks or months of architecture and planning work that aren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing worse than getting into a project that that at the end of it, oh my God, we went way over. So that's good to hear because, I've been in that position over the years, not personally, but with clients that have asked me and said, hey, we're thinking of doing this and we're thinking of doing that. And how much should we spend? I think ultimately it's going to be for a lot of these renovations because we're not talking about necessarily repairs, which have to be done. A lot of these renovations are more about what I would tell someone is more about like, okay, what are you trying to get at? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to enjoy this? Like, yeah, you might put that $100,000 kitchen in, and I would tell people like, hey, you might not even get that money back. But like, if we move, there's $50,000 that you're definitely not getting back. So like, choose your 50.
Yeah.
Just like, how's that going to make you happy? That's kind of the way I look at it from my end, because I mean, clearly I'm no contractor, but
that's why the discussion with your real estate professional is so important.
Mm-hmm.
It's that don't call me for return on investment. That's not what we deliver. We deliver quality of lifestyle for the money that you invest.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not in any way related to the market value of your home. Some renovations make more sense than others in terms of resale value, but very rarely does comprehensive or luxury level remodeling pay back from that standpoint. So you have to do it because it enhances the way you live.
Right. So TV is not right.
No, TV is wrong.
TV is wrong. I mean, we all suffer from the TV effect, if you will. I'll leave it at that. But like, what do you want me to know? Like if I'm talking to someone and they want a custom bath or something, what do you want me to know? Like, what would make my life easier as someone that is in a position to try and help someone make those decisions?
I think the best thing that any consumer can be armed with is good information.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, it needs to be real and it needs to be brutal.
Okay.
There's a tendency to do what we call smoke the hopium, which is to sort of, underestimate what things are really going to cost.
Right.
And you can get yourself into a financial pickle if you do that.
Right.
And there's some really crazy rules or tricks, if you will, that I like to teach people about that at least inject a note of realism into these discussions. And I'll share a couple of them with you. They're sort of funny. I don't know why they work, but they do.
Okay.
One is called Pete's Crazy $10,000 rule.
I love it already.
Everything costs $10,000.
Does it involve a piano?
Doesn't matter what it is.
Everything's $10,000.
Everything's $10,000. Doesn't matter what it is. If you make a long enough list of things and you write $10,000 next to each one, you'd be surprised how it at least gets you in the zone and it gets you off the smoking of hopium.
Seriously.
And the more brutally you apply that rule, the better off you are in the long run. So, for example, you can't stand in a kitchen and say, well, kitchen, $10,000. No. Doesn't work like that. It's cabinets and countertops and flooring and lighting and plumbing and appliances and so on. And pretty soon you're waving 8 or 10 fingers around in the air and that now you're in the right spot, right?
Yeah.
So the crazy $10,000 rule is one way that if you're touring a house with a client and they're kind of trying to figure out, how much is it going to cost for me to do the things I want to do in this house? That's one way you can tackle it. The other way, there's a bunch of things the little tools like this that we use to eyeball estimate things. Another one is to kind of think about how long is something likely to take to build or to execute. And you've done enough of this over the years that you kind of know how long it takes for somebody to come in and get something done and go out. And there are basically 2 broad classifications of cost or labor cost involved in this. One we call the man in the van.
Okay.
And the man in the van, and you can look out at a construction site.
There's vans everywhere.
See this anytime.
Yeah.
The man in the van is a mechanical trades person. And it's in truth, it's usually 2 people in a white panel van, right?
Yeah.
You've seen a million of them, big Ford Econolines, Mercedes Sprinters, whatever.
Yeah.
And those guys travel in these vans because they're full of little shelves and drawers and stuff inside that have all the tools for their trades in them.
Sure.
Mechanical contractors tend to drive those types of vehicles. And mechanical contractors are electricians, plumbers, HVAC people. I would also classify finished carpenters as some of the trim and final installation guys in that bucket. And the man in the van costs $2,000 a day.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what they're here to do. Sometimes a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but it's kind of like the $10,000 rule, right? If you apply it liberally across enough stuff. So if you can kind of eyeball engineer a scope of work and say, well, I want to put a bunch of lighting into the house.
So you need an electrician for a day, and that's $2,000. And you need a plumber for a day, and that's $2,000. And you need a carpenter for a day, and that's $2,000. Or times
carpenter is a different kind of guy.
Yeah.
So the carpenter we call Chuck in a truck.
Chuck in the truck. Okay. So the trim guy is in the van.
That's right.
Chuck's in the truck. Okay. Got it.
Trim guy, I put them with the man in the van. But carpentry trades, rough carpentry, drywall, masonry, excavation, general labor. Those guys are a little less expensive. For better or worse, that's at the lower end of the labor scale. And Chuck in a truck tends to cost about $1,000 a day.
Fair.
So every job site has a mixture, and you can look outside and see this in practice. There's a mixture of pickup trucks and vans. And the guys in the trucks are usually a little cheaper than the guys in the vans, but it's because of a division of labor about what they're there to do.
And they're doing big type work. They're doing
correct
kind of nail and screw type work and just the big picture.
That's absolutely right. That leads me to my third set of rules.
Okay.
Which is about how do you best visualize a construction project in terms of its organization, execution, and its cost. And the easiest way to think of a construction project is that it's a lot like baking a cake.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, there's this thing that comes out of the oven, right? It's round or it's square or whatever it is. It's a shape and a form.
Sure.
And to this cake, you then have to apply icing and decoration to make it look the way that you want it to look. And there's a lot of interrelated items between cake and icing. They're not completely separate.
Okay.
Consider the humble candle.
Okay.
Right? It's a decorative item, right? But if you put a candle on top of the cake, it fundamentally alters the function of that cake. Now
Now it's a birthday.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
Cake and icing in construction is the dichotomy between Chuck in the truck and the man in the van. So cake is built by Chuck. And it's the framing, it's the drywall, it's the structure, it's the basic forming to the thing. The mechanical trades install the icing. And of the two things, cake is usually the cheap part.
Okay.
So when we approach a project with a client and we're talking about taking walls down or moving things around, and those are often what feel like the expensive things to the client, they typically are not.
Yeah.
Poking a hole in the wall and moving things around is cake. Cake is generally not terribly expensive.
Sure.
But when you disturb the cake, you create a requirement for icing. So if I knock a wall down in your kitchen, now I've got to put more kitchen.
And you might hit some plumbing or whatever. Is it designed by Chad with an iPad? Or
Chad with a pad? I like that.
I'm dying to ask that question, but no, it's Pete with a pencil. I mean, I don't know, but okay. So, what are people doing? Are people really designing their whole kitchens and bathrooms and ripping them apart and like selling their house the next month?
No.
Do you see that a lot?
I very rarely see it.
Okay.
Usually when people engage us to do that kind of serious work, it's because they've made a decision to stay for the long term.
Good. So what else do you think is important to know if you're going into one of these projects? Like, how do you deal with the idea of like, man, I've designed this whole kitchen. We put all this thought in it. Now, the man in the van is here, and then the guys are putting the icing on, and like you go, oh man, did I make the right decision? How do you do that? Like, I know how I do that in my world, but like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? Like,
that's a good question, and I think it comes down to planning.
Right.
In our process, the planning phase takes 2/3 of the time. So we actually spend twice as much time in planning and design than we do in actual construction.
Okay.
So for the most part, once once the, we're sort of pounding the nails and things are coming together, the incidence of kind of, buyer's remorse or a change of heart is very, very low. It is not to say that doesn't happen, but in our process, that happens during the development of the project. And there can be quite a bit of hand-wringing and mind-changing. And, I've seen many, many projects over the years go from, one design paradigm to something that was completely different.
Sure.
And we had almost a fully formed set of ideas that we just threw out and started over. But the key to doing that successfully is don't do it when you're in construction.
Talk to. So how many change orders per job would you say you see?
On average, maybe half a dozen. Okay. And change for us is typically between 2 and 4% of the cost of the contract. So it's actually pretty small.
Okay.
But again, it's mostly because we wrangle through change during the development of the project, not during the construction of the project.
So taking the time to figure that out and figure out the plan is really effective.
Yes.
You're saying. Okay. Does that save the client money, do you think?
Potentially, yes. It absolutely can. Nothing is more costly than last minute change, particularly if the things that you decide to change have already been bought and paid for.
Okay.
You're going to buy it twice.
Yeah.
So if you make those decisions and those kind of flip-flops during planning, then you've spent no money on product.
Okay.
But having said that, often things that come up during design, a lot of things that are great ideas are expensive to execute, and they represent cost escalation that happens during the design process. So it's not unusual for things to change by 10, 15, 20% during design.
Okay.
But at least if you do it in that order, you're not spending the money twice on product.
Interesting. What kind of, I've spent some time asking you my perspective, my questions from like kind of the other end. What questions do you have for someone like me who's on this side of the fence with the clients? Like in regards to how this connects, anything in regards to it.
One of the things we used to do, but back in the old days.
The old days?
When
I don't know what that is. Is that the late 1900s?
Yeah.
Okay.
When the dinosaurs ruled the earth. But do you remember there used to be a time when houses didn't sell in 2 days?
Yes, I remember that time very vividly. Yes, I do. Yeah. I do. I was there.
Days,
I would say, yeah.
Had time to play a round of golf between sign and contract. Yeah. Well, anyway, if we ever get back there, one of the things that we used to like to do was to partner with real estate professionals to help their clients hunt for a house. With the specific idea that we would target renovation candidates, homes that we knew needed work, or homes that had opportunities, so that it helped you guys. You didn't have to find the perfect property.
Right.
You had to find a property that could be made perfect. And if we have just enough time to analyze that, do a few quick napkin sketches, work up some basic costs, and arm the client with the information they need to make an intelligent offer on the property and to understand what they're faced with in the next steps when they go to renovate. We had some very successful partnerships in that under those circumstances. It's a little tough to do now because it's hard to spin that information out fast enough to address the realities of the market.
Yeah.
So partnering with real estate people in that regard is gold for both of us.
What kind of things can I do to help my clients further with analyzing some of this stuff with a compressed timetable? Is there a resource? Is there a thought process besides chucking the truck? By the way, that's amazing because that really helps me tell a story, because I understand that story. And my challenge as an agent sometimes is after, 20 some years, is trying to show them, and I'm already there. I got to get them there. So what can I tell people when they evaluate this? Because when I see this, I see a lot of people will walk through a home and they will overestimate what it costs to fix a home in their opinion. But then somehow I also see that some people will buy a home and completely underestimate what it's going to take to get it there. So they're long on hopium for sure. And then some people are just way off. Like everybody, they might think a roof costs $50,000. So,
well, Mike, what kind of roof is it?
I mean, how big's the house, etc. So, within reason, right? Within a 3,500 square foot home.
Sure.
What do you say to people that want to buy homes that are only 10 years old? Right? Like,
I think it speaks to the idea of creating trusting relationships, which I know you're really good at doing. Your clients trust you and the advice that you give them. And my clients do me too. We're not out to get anything. And
right.
if you have that understanding with people, then I think you have the groundwork necessary to make realistic assessments of what's required. Mm-hmm. Right? The worst thing that an agent can do is to sell a home on the basis of the hopium.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Buy this house. It's only going to cost you $10,000 to fix it up. That's bullshit. And you're going to get caught out and your client's going to be mad.
Yeah. They're going to hate.
Learn to use rules like the $10,000 rule. I mean, that's silly too, but people like me can provide cheat sheets to you guys that sort of give you an idea what project costs are. And help the client to be realistic about what they expect and what it's likely to cost. The worst thing in the world that we can do is create false expectations, because at some point, you and I both have to meet those expectations. And if we set ourselves up to fail, we're going to have some unhappy clients. So
we don't want that for sure.
But another thing you can always do is, and you and I have done this, but advice to other agents and other contractors is form partnerships.
Right.
Have a contractor that you can get on the phone with, and if you have an important client or someone on the fence about a potential cost, give me a call. Come out and take a look.
Yeah.
Even in this market of 24 or 72 hour kind of time portals that you have to make these decisions, I can still get out there in the morning and give you some ballparks. And in turn, we do the same. As I mentioned earlier, I counsel my clients to go house hunting.
Yeah.
So it's a synergy between our two industries that I think is underexploited. More of us should be doing this.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that's a lacking thing? Because, I'll sell a house and I'll get calls from agents and they'll ask me the wildest things. And I'm like, how do you even know? And we're constantly trained by the brokers, by the managers, by the owners to not say anything outside of our expertise, right? Don't talk to people about numbers that you don't know are certain. Get the numbers from somebody else. Get that contractor quote, get this, get that, leverage that inspector if you have one, so we're taught not to say things, and we're very careful to do so. And that's very wise advice. But there is, at the same time, there is a way to learn these things. And I guess it's making sure to have good connections with good contractors is probably a worthwhile thing.
Absolutely. And your clients are aware of the benefit of your experience, right?
Yeah.
In some cases, in some ways, there's no way to short circuit this, right? I've been doing this for 30 years and you have too. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm good at what I do.
Right.
I would be hard pressed to fill this role of trusted advisor if I'd only been doing this for 6 months. So there are things that can be taught and trained for sure. There are things that can only be learned over time.
Right.
And wise clients look for praise, frankly, like us, who have that storehouse of experience, right?
I think experience is coming back.
Really?
I think it's coming back. I think it's becoming back in vogue. But we talk about this all the time, right? Like we're dinosaurs and this and that. And here we are doing stuff on social media and stuff, but we're not dancing.
Yeah,
right? Nobody's dancing.
No TikTok. Can't do that. But I think my hip would be like, oh. Yeah.
And that's, we've shared some clients, and that's my client. I think that's your client too, is the educated person that's concerned about the numbers, but not dedicated to just a number, that understands lifestyle, that understands different things. So that's what I like about you guys, and that's the way we try to run it. So,
and I do think that between the two of us too, we have to have an honest conversation about what value is represented by construction and remodeling work, right? Mm. That it isn't a great investment. That's the bottom line.
Mhm. Yeah.
And for people in my position to be telling our potential clients that, drop $250,000 on this project and it'll make your house worth more is not true. It just isn't. And the flip side of that is for agents to counsel clients that with a modicum of work, you can make this house worth a lot more. That's probably not true either.
Yeah.
So hard realism, shared between us in our respective industries, I think is serves the client the best in the end.
So would you say it's better to buy a house that's completely renovated, granted it's renovated the right way, or would you buy a house that needs everything? What's your personal preference? Doesn't matter the answer.
My personal preference would be to buy a house that needs to be renovated.
Okay.
But that's because I love that approach.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are both car guys and car collectors, right? And the old song,
more of a user, but
buy the best example you can afford. Because it's always more expensive to restore an antique vehicle than it is to buy one that's been restored.
But I've seen
same in your for houses. Yeah. Don't look at the oil leaks on the garage floor. That you don't need to see them.
No, but
you don't need to.
No, that's true, right? You're going to spend. It's true in a lot of things, right? You're going to wind up spending the money here or there, and I've seen people get into houses. I haven't put them in them, but I've especially when the market's down, wound up doing a lot of rescue work, right, from this bad situation, and then I'm called in to fix it, right? But I have seen a lot of people buy a house in the hope that they can fix it up, but then get no advice on, oh boy, you bought this house, but you used all the money you had to buy it, so now you can't fix it up.
Yeah.
So I've seen that in action, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
So I tell clients hey, based on your money situation, based on your propensity to deal with the stress of a remodel, I was a kid eating cereal while my mom was ripping the roof off the house, the tarp, in August, eating breakfast cereal with a blue tarp over the house because she was bumping it up. And it was a miserable summer. It was hot. It was full of bugs. We had coolers for our food. And I think I'm so damaged by it. The last 7 houses I bought have all been new construction.
Yeah.
And the only ones I've bought that are really used in a while are the ones I invested in. But then I've had people come in. But there has to be a balance between what people can spend, what they should spend. And I like to call it the balance between the emotional and the financial.
That's a good way to put it.
The stronger your financial position is, the more emotional you get to act, right? Because if you want to act on having less stress, less problems, less failure, but sometimes that costs money to do it.
Yeah.
It costs money to stay in that house for an extra 2 months while you do your reno. If you're financial strong, you can do that. You get that emotional luxury almost. And then if your financial position isn't as strong, you're kind of eking it through, then there's kind of a walk you have to walk to kind of get there.
Yeah.
That has to be engineered, and that has to be really thought about, because, you buy that house that needs that work and you can't get that work done. That's a big problem. And where we really see this is we see this in foreclosures. Foreclosures and REOs, there's a difference, but we won't get into that. They seem to be like shiny pennies, and they keep having this problem. Maybe it's a structural problem. Maybe it's a problem that's really expensive or hard to solve. And you see people, it's sad to see, but you see people buy these houses over and over again, and they're foreclosed. I owned a house that was foreclosed 3 times, and I bought it, and I put all kinds of work into it. I bought it during the downturn. And everything went wrong, and we fixed it and we did okay. I sold it. When I sold it, my tenant had really run through it, and I pulled it off the market because I put it on the market looking for a quick sale, pulled it off the market, and someone got really motivated to buy that. Some agent called me and said, my client really wants to buy this house. And then I was like, well, they're not going to have the money to do this reno that I'm about to do to put this back on the market. He says, they don't care. And I said, are you sure? I said, well, look, send me an offer. We'll consider selling that house. But otherwise, I'm just going to do the reno. my opinion, they sent us a stupid offer. Like there was no way we were not signing it because we just did the math. We were like, we're going to put this much in, we're going to get that much out, or we can take this now. And it didn't add up. So to me, it's just math, right? To me, it's math. So that's where I kind of struggle. Right. You guys are like super creative. Like you're a super creative person. I'm creative with the math, but those are just things I don't see people really think about. It's like my money's here, my money's there, my time's here, my time is there. Just the lifestyle part of it. So
I think it's hard to do in the place that you live. So if they're investment properties, you're going to take a different approach to things.
Sure.
But so often these kind of houses are not, they may be built, they may be purchased by people that have an investment goal in mind, right? They're buying it cheap. If they can put a little bit of work into it, that'll put them in a good spot, right?
Right.
But they're really buying a home to live.
Right.
And they underestimate the cost because they really want to live in that house.
Right.
And they muddle through and do the best that they can, and sometimes that it's a turkey and they don't make any money on it. But if they love where they live, who cares?
Right. Yeah. Like
if you buy it as an investor, it's a whole different story.
I mean, I tell people that primary residence is like forced savings at best. And people hate that when I say that. Like they just look at me like they don't want to hear that. But I mean, that's part of my acquired charm, if you will, as a real estate agent. I'll walk people into a house. I just did it the other day. I was in, where was I? I was in Chester Springs, and I was in this house, and I am very much sensitive to like mold and moisture. And I'm not a human mold meter. I have to say that legally, but like I'll walk into a basement and I'll look at the house and I'll go, this is awful, and leave. So I walked in this basement. I just walked right out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we're not buying this house. You're not buying this house. But then, I'll say like, they say, oh, I really want to buy this house. I'll tell them again why. I'll point out everything that I see as a layman, but someone that's been in tens of thousands of houses probably. And then on the third time, I go, how much are we going to offer? Because you want to treat people as an adult, right?
Right.
So
their own choices, and maybe they're not as sensitive to mold as you are. And
maybe they
got rubber gloves and a bucket of bleach, and they're good to go.
That's just one example, right? But I think that's important. That's an extreme example, but I think that's important in renovation and in real estate.
Yeah. Well, if you ever want to get involved in stuff that completely blurs the line,
okay,
try doing what Sandy and I have embarked on.
Oh, yes.
The Airbnb investments. I mean, those properties are a remarkable roller coaster. It's intense because you're combining all of the feel goods and the aesthetic elements of your own home with the requirement to make a return on investment. That's really bonkers to try to build a beautiful place that's fun to live in. And our Airbnbs have way more toys than my house does. And I mean,
that's terrible.
I want to go stay in. Yeah.
You want to stay in?
Yeah. I want to spend weekends.
I told you not to do that, by the way. I know, but like you guys did it with a flair. So when I looked at it, I was like, this is actually really good, but I don't think I could pull off what you did.
Yeah.
Like when I look at the
half
photos,
real estate investment, half dream home, and third dream home, and 1/3 hospitality business.
The hotel
amenity rich experience for people to spend money on, and that's a real roller coaster. But it's taught me some interesting lessons about how do you prioritize the aesthetic against the requirements of the investment
and the fund,
which goes against my normal sort of mode of thinking when it comes to remodeling. I counsel people over and over again, don't look at it as an investment because it's going to be a turkey.
Right.
And they typically are. But it proves the point that you can have a creative outcome and still be dollars and cents sensitive. So, our Airbnbs have to make an ROI that my house doesn't have to make. And I've surprised myself in some ways by showing that we can do that. You can do a major remodel on the right property if you're starting it from the right place that yields a luxury result and still respects the number.
I think it's critical, though, to also account for, like, yes, if you can buy a property right, and, that's where the money would be made if that's an investment to put something into it. But yeah, the differentiator between, is this where I'm living? Is this where I'm investing money? Is a big thing. And I've seen people do flips, which I also don't recommend. And
yeah, I have a lot of respect to people that can succeed at that.
Yeah.
That is an art form that I have not mastered, is the fix and flip.
But can succeed consecutively, right? Because you see someone do like 2-3 flips and then the fourth one bankrupts them.
I've also been called in to rescue a lot of crappy flips.
Yeah.
For people that bought them and now have to live in them. So you got to do it right. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for people that can do that.
So real estate wise, remodeling wise, if you had like one thought to leave us with today, what do you think clients of mine who will see this, people that we know that will see this, people that we really like care about?
Yeah.
What can you tell them? Your big takeaway on what they need to think about if they're kind of embarking in a master bath or a kitchen or whatever?
I would say that you and I and our clients all live by the same old-fashioned real estate cliche, right? Location, location, location.
Yeah.
Buy the house that's where you want to be. And that's a macro concern. You know, the community that you want to be in, the area you want to live in. Geez, these days with telecommuting, the part of the country you want to be in.
Sure.
So look at the macro, buy the right location. And then look at the micro, buy the right neighborhood. Are you on a cul-de-sac lot with a beautiful view that you couldn't duplicate anywhere else?
Right.
Because what I hear from my clients over and over again when I pitch them this problem of house hunt before you renovate, what people who choose to renovate almost universally say is, I love where I live and I couldn't get this location somewhere else.
Right.
I love my neighbors. I love my neighborhood. I love my community. I love my schools. I love my lot. Whatever it is, location is the basis for everything that you and I do.
Right.
Crappy location, not worth the investment in a reno, but it's also not worth the investment as a purchase in the first place. So
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't
boil it down to one thing.
It's just location.
That's it, man.
The location. Yeah. The idea of like, you can't like, you know, I've heard people say that to me, like, I'd love to move this house somewhere else, but you can't do it, but you can't move somewhere else to the house either.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good thought, Peter. Well, hey man, like, I appreciate you spending the time.
You bet, man. It was a pleasure. As always. Enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you for coming.